Greetings and welcome to this episode of Bring It On. My name's Bob Hayes and I'm going to be your show host for today's show. As we told you with the last show, we were going to do some more shows on school district stuff to see where we are. So I'm delighted to have School Superintendent Jeff Szymaniak here with me today.
Thanks for the invite back, Bob.
How'd it go? We talked about last show, we were going to talk about opening day, with the preparation of getting schools ready all summer was done, and we talked about all of that and all the buildings get done. Let's talk a little bit about opening day.
Sure, I'd love to elaborate on that. So opening day, let me go back to opening day for teachers. I think it's important for our community members to know that our teachers were in 2 full days before our students came in for professional development and all the nuances of rules and regulations that have come down through the state that we need to educate them on for this year. So we had a great opening morning on Monday the 27th. We had all of our teachers in our Performing Arts Center. I was able to introduce myself with my new Assistant Superintendent, George Farrow, and our goals and objectives for this year, which really revolves around student learning, school safety, and social emotional development for our kids. We had the former superintendent's wife, Miss Margaret McEwen, come in and award Stephanie Powers, a first grade teacher at Duval, the Do What's Right for Kids Award, which was fantastic for all the stuff that she's done for our district. We also had a guest speaker for our teachers around motivation and what it really means to be a teacher. His name was Norm Bosio, and it was a very well organized and well receptive crowd. Teachers were fired up and really motivated to go out and meet with our students. We then went to a barbecue, which was facilitated by our facilities department, but all the food items were purchased by our custodial contract company, SJ Services. So they donated all of the food for our teachers. And then our collegiate press, who does all our photocopying, gave us an ice cream truck for the day, or for that morning. So teachers were well fed and ready to go back to their buildings. I think the energy level for our teachers was high. I didn't really love the fact that it was 98 degrees outside that day. So we were ill prepared for the heat for the first day for teachers, but that just rolled into that Wednesday. So I was able to go to every school when the children arrived on that Wednesday, and it was great to see all the faces. I'm used to high school kids coming in a little grumpy in the morning at 7:05, but seeing the kindergartners come off their bus at their elementary schools was phenomenal for me. Again, I didn't anticipate the record heat for the state of Massachusetts that day. We topped off at 98 degrees. And as you know, and maybe all of our viewers don't know, we don't have air conditioning in all of our buildings. That's something we should probably look at in the near future if we're going to be dealing with extreme temperatures. But our teachers were resilient. I think our kids were phenomenal that week, and we worked through that opening process. Everything that was supposed to be done was done by day one. Now, I will say I was a little nervous on Monday evening when a few things weren't done, but Ernie Sandlin in the facilities department had the building spick and span by 4 p.m. for those elementary open houses, so all of our parents were able to meet their teachers the day before school opened, and the buildings were up to snuff as what we expected.
It's amazing. We talked about opening day, and I was ecstatic to have the opportunity to be there myself. And just backing up a smidge, for the viewers that don't know, can we talk just a little bit about the John McEwen Award of Do What's Right for Kids? I know John was a superintendent for a long time while I was on the committee, and he used to say, do what's right for kids. Always would use those terms of do what's right for kids. This is a teacher's award. Can we talk about it just a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. So in John's memory, an award is given out to a teacher who's nominated by either their peers, their administrator, by someone in the school who they feel goes above and beyond for the students of Whitman Hanson. This year, and I think there were 7 nominees. There's a small committee that gathers. This year, I will be on the committee as the superintendent. Last year, I was not. And they look at all the recommendations. They look at the application from the teacher, and then they award this award. Mrs. McEwen comes in and presents that. There's a small token, a $500 award that's given to that teacher, which in turn most of our teachers go right back and they put it right back into their classroom. I don't think there has been an award winner who's not. That's just who our teachers are. But it's really to symbolize the whole district, but award an individual who goes above and beyond for our kids.
That's an awesome award. And I had the opportunity, I know we talked about opening day, but we toured the schools with some members of the school committee. And it was so nice to go from building to building. I'm pretty sure we were in Duval, was one of the buildings I went to. And we walk in a room, and here's the teacher with her mother, who was a former teacher, and her children. The kids are filling goodie bags, the parents helping out. It's a great thing to see all of these people getting ready, the excitement for opening day. It adds to it, I think.
I think, and my wife's a teacher. She's a teacher in Situate. And I think come August 1st, teachers start gearing up and thinking about what they can do in their classrooms. And it was pretty evident when we walked around that there were teachers in pockets of the different buildings. It was warm. It was the middle of summer.
It was hot.
And they were preparing their classrooms. In fact, Mrs. Silva was in there doing her goodie bags. She recruited her mother-in-law, and she was putting her kids to work. They're not on our payroll, but putting them to work and getting them ready for opening day, because we want our children to walk in, we want our students to walk in and feel welcome right away. I think the days of when I grew up, and you were a little bit afraid and anxious to go to school. It was tough, and there were rules and regulations to be followed. I think we've turned that corner a little bit. We really want to welcome our students in, and we want them to feel comfortable. The academic expectation is absolutely there. The expectation of respect for yourself and for your peers and for your teacher is absolutely there. But I think we're also talking about how to treat each other and how we understand how you want to feel. It doesn't mean that we're overcompensating, but we want all kids to walk into a classroom and say, this is where I want to be, this is where I want to learn, this is what I want to do for the next 180 days. And it starts from the teacher feeling passionate about their work environment and why we did that motivation day one. It's about people in our district. It's about doing the best we can for the people that work for us and for our students that come to our buildings.
So day one was awesome. Like I said, I had some opportunity to be there. I thought Norm Bosio was unbelievable. He's a former superintendent, and he's probably one of the best stand-up comedians I've ever seen, because he has the background in schools. So it related to the teachers and the different things that were going on. Day two, or day one for students.
Day one for students was an atypical day just because of the heat. So they went through their motions. They got their learning expectations from their teachers, and I think we had to make some adjustments in some of our schools to put kids in cooling areas, Indian Head in the library, different schools in their computer labs, just to give them a little bit of a break. What we did on the district end was we made sure that every school had water provided for them, making sure that if a kid couldn't afford a 50 cents or $1 for a bottle of water, we provided that for them. Not many kids took that opportunity, but it made us feel better and made sure that the teachers each had a case of water in their rooms, especially at the elementary level. We also made sure all of our working air conditioners were working, and there are some students that require air conditioning because of medical issues. Same with teachers. So some of those rooms, we needed to make sure that our teachers were properly being cared for and those students were properly being cared for. Dismissal day 1, 2, and 3 were great. Friday of that week, we had a half day of school, and I think some parents might have questioned why we did a professional day that first week of school, and I'll tell you one of the reasons why we wanted to do that this year is there are certain documents, legal documents, they're called individualized education plans and 504s that require our teachers to read through. Sometimes the document's 2 or 3 pages per student. Sometimes they can be 6 or 7 or 8. And if a teacher has 25 kids on IEPs or 504s, they have to do it during their time of the school day, their preparation time, to read those. So on that Friday, we as a district made sure that every teacher signed off on all their legal documents for their kids, so that Monday after Labor Day, school could be in full session, making sure that all our documents were signed, all our I's are dotted and T's were crossed, making sure that our kids were getting the best of their classroom experience.
Now, I understand also on day one, we had police, fire, everybody high-fiving, everybody, especially in the elementary schools.
Can't forget about that. So the week, maybe 2 weeks prior, Chief Benton, Whitman Police Chief, shot me an email and said, hey, what do you think about my guys coming out and doing some high fives at the elementaries in the middle? And I said, absolutely. So I contacted Chief Mix, Chief Thompson, and Chief Greno, and said, hey, how can we do it across the district so that police and fire are at our buildings? And if you saw, or if you were a parent and came to drive up, you had firemen high-fiving at Whitman Middle, at Duval and at Conley, at Indian Head and at Hanson Middle. You had the police and fire there. They were great. I think it was such a a welcoming experience for students to, again, your middle level kids, your 8th graders got off the bus a little grumpy, but high-fiving the chief, or the lieutenants and the sergeants and the patrolmen and the firemen. It was just a good experience. And one of the things we want to do as a district, and I've got close ties with the 4 chiefs, want to make sure that we all work together so that even, more, the first day of school is a great opportunity. It's a new beginning. But I also want those guys around, and I want our students to feel comfortable if there is a problem, if there is a situation that police might be involved. And we all know in our society that is more and more frequent. But I want our students to know that they're good people behind the badge and that they're there to help us. So doing that warm welcome for them is just another opportunity for them to be involved in our schools and show that partnership that we have.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the changes, because the changes sometimes come with the oopsies here and there. We had a closing of McQuon School in Hanson, and so it moved some students from McQuon to Indian Head, and then a moving of a grade from Indian Head to Hanson Middle.
Correct. So I think that to start there, the movement from Indian Head to Hanson Middle was the smoothest because the students are a little bit older, and Hanson Middle didn't require much renovation to adjust to that student population. We had some bumps at Indian Head. Some things weren't done that were supposed to be done, and some items were missing from McQuon in just that transition. We're still working on some of those pieces. Most of the rooms were adequately equipped, and I think just the transition for the students, and I think the Indian Head staff did a remarkable job, and the McQuon staff did a remarkable job coming together as a team. But I saw, just as an observer point of view, when we dismissed, some teachers at Indian Head weren't used to kindergarten students, and how that transition goes. As a former high school administrator, walking those little kids off the bus for the first day, it took a little bit more time than we anticipated. So on that first day of school, it was at dismissal time, we were half hour late dismissing our kids home because of making sure that every child was on the correct bus and was in the correct car. So I think those were the little kinks at Indian Head and that transition. And another little kink that we did have is we were going to turn over McQuon to the town of Hanson on September 1st. Middle of August, we realized that wasn't going to be a good target date for us. We wouldn't be fully out of McQuon School. And another mea culpa was we are now turning the building over in October 31st, because we ended up storing some materials and some surplus materials in McQuon once we emptied the building from the rest of the district. So we're not ready to turn that building over until October 31st. I went before the school committee last week to make sure that, or 2 weeks ago, to make sure that was okay. And Hanson is ready, willing, and able to accept that October 31st deadline. The other piece of transition is we had some specialized programs move over from Indian Head and McQuon to Duval. I think that transition was relatively seamless. We worked with some of the parents over the summer to make sure that did happen. And facility-wise, we were in a really good spot.
Talking about the turning over of McQuon, there's going to be some type of a yard sale. What's the date and what's the thought?
So at Ernie Sandlin, the director of facilities, hasn't given me a date for the October sale. I think I'll announce that at the school committee meeting on October 10th. But we're going to give our town offices first crack to see what they can use as materials in the building. And then there will be a surplus yard sale for everybody in town to come and see what we have. And I'll be honest, I walked through the building, there's some great shelving units. There's some things there that are relatively old, but a person who has some time on their hand, isn't a fixer-upper, can get some good deals.
That's awesome. Move over to Whitman. I know we didn't have the changes of any schools closing in Whitman, but there were some big interior changes.
Sure.
Interior parts of the buildings. I knew Duval had safety and security change in the front of the building, and so did, and I still call it Forest Street, but it's really Conley School. So did that school have some changes?
So what we really did this summer at all 3 elementary schools was we redesigned the entrance for our guests and our parents to make it more safe and secure. If you had been in our elementary schools prior to this year, prior to this summer, you were able to buzz in and walk into the building and check into the main office. We created a second barrier. So once you buzz in, you're not able to have access to the school until you sign in and check in with the appropriate office support staff person. You also are running your ID in there and getting a badge before you come in. So it's just a second layer of access to the building. The both towns were very generous in supporting that capital movement for us, and it just creates another barrier for an intruder to come in, or for a parent that I wouldn't want just walking around the building, or for somebody looking for someone, a vendor or somebody in facilities or maintenance that we're contracting out. They have to have that stopgap, and it just makes me feel much more secure for our students in those buildings.
Awesome. So that's kind of bringing safety and security up to snuff, so to speak. High school,
Sure.
giant change there. The loop,
Yeah.
as we're
That's right.
calling it.
Correct.
The
Correct.
new classrooms for the very, very young students.
Sure. So preschool moved to the high school. I almost forgot about preschool, but preschool moved to the high school, and we had some major changes within the school structure, the high school itself. 5 classrooms were totally redesigned, little toilets on the bottom in each of those classrooms, and a double set of interior doors were put up to make sure that the preschool was relatively isolated from the student body, and just for another layer of security, making sure our 3, 4, and 5-year-olds couldn't just necessarily walk out of the building. They had to go through multiple layers of doors to exit. Also put in a playground at the preschool. The finishing touches were being put on this week. We had a little delay in the contractor with that piece of it. And then the interior loop. So at the high school, we had a bus loop, which would drop kids off, and parents would drop off and pick up in that loop. We added another loop so parents could actually park and drop their preschoolers off. And as a secondary piece of that, it has increased the flow of high school traffic to make it quicker. And if any parent has ever dropped off at the high school, that 7:05 start time, if you're not in the traffic line at 20 of 7, you're not getting to the building, because we're trying to put in 1,200 people at one time. So that interior loop has been very beneficial for the student body at the high school, and also the preschool parents and the students of the preschool.
Well, I had the opportunity recently to go down when there was a big event at the high school and look at the loop. And from what I could see, it's also done is it's kept the fire lane completely open for any emergencies that may arise. And it's given a little bit more parking to the front of the high school with the loop, and it seems to help the traffic flow, as you're talking about. When you're coming out of the loop, you have to go right, where at certain times people will be taking left, looking for parking lots, shopping their way around, which stops traffic flow.
And if I could just jump in on that, I think that you just hit a crucial point, because we still have had people in that parking lane and a fire lane at the high school. So Dr. Chris Jones, with my support, sent out a letter to parents in the high school community to try to refrain from parking in that fire lane. We did have a situation where a football player broke his ankle, and I couldn't get rescue in time, or not in time, appropriately, because there were too many cars in that fire lane. So we sent something out to parents, and it's just a reminder, please don't park in any of the fire lanes off hours or on hours at any of the schools, because you never know who's in the building and the needs of that if we do call EMS.
It seems to me with all the schools and all the programs that are going on, there are no off hours. Those buildings are getting used day and night, which is wonderful. I mean, they're owned by the towns, and the taxpayers of the towns are having a tremendous amount of use out of those buildings. We talked about safety and security and the loop and what goes on at the buildings. Playgrounds. You talked about the finished playground. Well, there's also a new, we won't call it a playground because it's an activity center.
Correct.
On the right-hand side, and we've been asked about that. Could you just touch on that a little bit, Jeff?
At the high school?
Yeah, the one that's up on the upper parking lot.
Sure.
That Mr. The TAD.
Oh, okay. The recreational center.
Yes.
Sure. So over the past 5 years, Bob Rogers, who's the athletic director at the high school, has solicited and has gotten donations to put activities equipment, volleyball, basketball area. At the far end, if you are exiting the high school, you'll see it on your right. There's some fitness equipment, there's a basketball court, and there's a volleyball, a sand pit for volleyball. Hugely used during PE exercises at the high school, but more and more now used off hours for basketball. And I walk out in the summer, and we don't want our students in the building necessarily in the summer without supervision. So those basketball courts have given our younger students and some of our older students, our alumni, have come back and used that activity area to play some hoops, to play some volleyball, and then using that fitness equipment as we have transitioned into a health and wellness curriculum here in our district. It's just another opportunity to do something outside the box or outside the four walls of a school, of a gymnasium.
Great. You also touched on it, and we kind of skipped around it a little bit, and I got into the playground thing, and I wanted to get into it right together. You talked about Dr. Jones sending out some emails. How are people going to, we're changing how we communicate with the students and the parents. Can you touch on that just a little bit? So people are aware where to go. With today's iPads and iPhones and everything being done through email, it's important for the student body and for the parents to know exactly how to communicate with the region. Not just the high school,
Correct.
but for parents to communicate with the region, whether it's website or any based on how to communicate with you.
So I'm still looking at always trying to update any type of communication we have, and as a older parent, I'm just turned 50 this year, and I have 2 elementary students. And I live in Pembroke. I go to the website quite a bit. I know parents go to our website, so we're still looking at our website to make sure everything's current. And I think information for parents K-12 or pre-K to 12 can be accessed through that website, just general information. But if you're looking to reach out and communicate with your child's school, I would start with the office email, either the main office email, a phone call to the main office, or email the assistant principal or the principal of that building. Each school, K to 12, has a principal and assistant principal. And if you need to reach out to a teacher, send the teacher an email. And this is my rule of thumb. If you don't receive something back within 48 business hours, and I'll reiterate, business hours don't include Saturday, Sunday, business hours, shoot another email out or make a phone call. Teachers have phones in their room. However, teachers aren't like your phone at home where you'll be notified that there's a message all the time. It's just a pick up and you'll hear that there's a message on your phone. And a lot of classroom teachers don't have those phones on their desk. They're on the wall, so it's not as easy for them to pick that up. So email is my preferred methodology of communication, but if you're not hearing back, please don't hesitate to send the assistant principal or principal an email to say, hey, look, I tried to contact Mr. Hayes and he hasn't responded back yet. One of the things that we've done to enhance security in our district is utilize some software, some fire prevention software, so that now we're not getting hacked. And some of that software has prevented some of our emails from coming through, and they go to our spam folder. So it's nothing against anybody. It's not an Xfinity or Verizon issue. Sometimes I don't get emails. I didn't get an email from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. It was flagged in my spam. So if you're not feeling that you're getting correspondence from that teacher, a phone call or a second email or a call to the main office would be beneficial. If you need to talk to the assistant principal or principal, a phone call or an email to them as well. But please be patient. If that email hasn't been responded to, follow up with something, because we are having some issues with spam. I'm not trying to be purposeful, but because of hackers out there. And at our next school committee member, our director of technology, is going to talk about safety as far as our student data. We want to be as preventative to keep our student data as safe as secure. But I also will say, start with your teacher if there's an issue, and then go up the chain. If there's an immediate issue that you feel like it's a safety security issue, call the building principal right away, or call that office and they'll be connected. And if you're not feeling that you're being heard and it needs to come to the central office, Mr. Farrow, Assistant Superintendent, myself, be very happy to speak to people.
So just to cap on that, any emergencies, call the main office.
Absolutely.
Email's a preferred way of trying to get connections, but occasionally it ends up in a spam folder because of the firewalls that are put up in today's world. Unfortunately, with what's going on in all of this communication, with the social communication, the way it's become, it's a necessary evil. So if they have a problem, don't hesitate to call. If you email and you don't hear in 48 hours, please either email again or make a phone call.
Correct.
These are all important things because communication is everything, Jeff. As you know, people need to communicate. You hold the most important thing in a
Absolutely
person's
correct.
life, their children.
Correct.
So they need to be able to communicate. Anything further about the opening or?
Well, I would just enhance too on communication. We do have a district Facebook page, Whitman Hanson Regional School District on Facebook. You can apply to be accepted in the group and I'll accept you. We put information out like that as well. Most schools have either a Facebook page or a Twitter account. Folks are on Twitter. You can get up-to-date information from the district. I'm on Twitter. Mr. Farrow's on Twitter. I know our athletic director's on Twitter. And most of the elementary and middle school principals are on Twitter as well. You could follow them. And you'll find little nuggets of information. You might even see some pictures of your kids out on that social media. But that's a newer way for us to put information out. I'm really not a proponent of for parents to communicate through Facebook to us, because sometimes that can go in another wing area. It can just go off on its own. So if you have some issues, or if something's of concern, I think a direct conversation is better than putting it out on social media. And I would just ask people to be fair and bring it to our attention before going to social media.
Well, as you know, with social media, the turns start going left and right.
All over the place.
And it takes on a life of its own. So it's good that we're encouraging as a district for people to communicate directly with building principals or assistant principals, or, as you said, start with the teacher and work up the chain to
correct.
Figure out if you have an issue or you don't have an issue. Always ask that question. Don't be bashful. Don't be afraid to go to whrsd.org and come up and see what's going on. What about visits, Jeff? I know from time to time, like occasionally we talked about seniors might want to come and tour the building. Is that maybe something we should think about in the future?
I think if somebody individually or a small group wants to come in and see, they were part of the building committee of the high school, or they were part of that group, and they want to see what's going on in the schools, I think you contact that building principal and say, hey, look, I'd like to see what's going on. For security reasons, we just can't have people walking in and out. And for privacy reasons, we just can't have people just sitting into classrooms and seeing what's going on. Not for teacher privacy, but for students' privacy. It's a place that they want to feel comfortable. So we don't want folks in and out all the time. But if people want to see our program and they want to see something specific, or they just want to see the general atmosphere, contact that building principal, make an arrangement, and for time. I'm sure the people that I have would take that time. We're not going to, and I'll be very honest, I'm not going to spend 6 or 7 hours with folks. I will, but I'm not going to ask my principals to do that. But if people want to see what we have, I'm absolutely not shy about showing what we have. I'm very proud of what we have in our district, as well the community members should be. And if they have questions and they want to see certain things, we can absolutely provide that opportunity.
Well, we're winding down a little bit, but I'm hearing some rumors now. We're talking about possibly you having a show called Super's Corner or Superintendent's Corner. And I understand that you'd like to get more of what's going on in the district, and just give us a quick thought process of what you may be putting together so parents could get involved.
Absolutely. So behind the glass, behind the scenes over here, I got a couple of tips about. They can actually go on the road. We don't have to sit in the studio, and we can actually have a traveling road show. So it's in the works to go building the building, and when events are taking place, or morning meeting, or science experiments, I'll have a little traveling road show, and we'll talk about what's going on in the building. We'll talk to some teachers, we'll talk to some kids, and we'll talk to some administrators about the good things that are happening. So stay tuned. Probably going to be doing every month or so, and maybe if it goes well, even a little bit more than that. But look forward to seeing that.
Great. Well, as always, ladies and gentlemen, we're winding down. It's been a very, very quick half hour. If you need to contact me or you'd like to be on Bring It On, my email is bobhayes4433@gmail.com, or you can call me on my cell phone at 617-538-0189. And if there's anything that you would like to see or have asked on any Bring It On show, don't hesitate to call me. Stay tuned, because we will be back.